It's time for Summit City Noise News. First, we go to the Washington Post. Headline: Trump ends covert CIA program to arm anti-Assad rebels in Syria, a move sought by Moscow. President Trump has decided to end the CIA's covert program to arm and train moderate Syrian rebels battling the government of Bashar al-Assad, according to U.S. officials. The program was a central plank of a policy begun by the Obama administration in 2013 to put pressure on Assad to step aside, but even its backers have questioned its efficacy since Russia deployed forces in Syria 2 years later. The decision on the CIA-backed rebels will be welcomed by Moscow, which focused its firepower on those fighters after it intervened in Syria in 2015. The decision will not affect a separate Pentagon-led effort to work with U.S.-backed Syrian rebels fighting the Islamic State. A major problem with going steady with militias in the Middle East has always been the end of the relationship. That's why President Trump will continue funding Middle Eastern militias in Syria. President Ronald Reagan armed and trained the Afghan holy warriors for their battles to suppress the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan throughout the 1980s. When the holy warriors achieved victory, the group splintered into the Afghan Taliban and Al-Qaeda, also known as the Base or the Foundation, led by holy warrior fundraiser and Saudi Arabian native Osama bin Laden. The Independent, survivors of 9/11 attack, urged Theresa May to release Saudi Arabia terror report she suppressed. A group representing U.S. survivors of the 9/11 attacks and the relatives of some of the almost 3,000 people who died has urged British Prime Minister Theresa May to seize the chance to make public a British government report into the extent of Saudi Arabia's funding of Islamist extremism in the UK. The UK now has the unique historic opportunity to stop the killing spree of Wahhabism-inspired terrorists by releasing the UK government's report on terrorism financing in the UK, which, according to media reports, places Saudi Arabia at its center of culpability, says the letter signed by 15 people. Sharon Promoli, one of the authors of the letter, was on the 80th floor of the North Tower of the World Trade Center when the first al-Qaeda plane struck and rushed to safety. Promoli says the U.S. government was actively involved in a cover-up of Saudi Arabia's role. 9/11 could not have happened without Saudi Arabia's support for al-Qaeda, says Jim Kreindler, the lead lawyer in a lawsuit filed in New York on behalf of the families of 850 individuals who were killed and 1,500 who were injured. Saudi Arabia and Iran served as the twin pillars of U.S. military influence in the Middle East during the Nixon administration, which ended with President Nixon's resignation in 1974. Iranian citizens ended Iran's reluctant partnership with the United States by deposing the Shah in 1979. 15 of the 19 al-Qaeda hijackers who destroyed the Twin Towers on 9/11 were from Saudi Arabia, the lone remaining twin pillar. Portland Press Herald. Senator Collins says Indiana's plan to expand Medicaid could be a model for Maine. Senator Susan Collins touted the Medicaid expansion in Indiana as a possible model for Maine. State governments decide whether to expand Medicaid, and Maine is among the 19 states that have not done so. I think Indiana came up with a good plan, the Republican said. If Maine does decide to expand Medicaid, a good model for Maine to consider would be the Indiana model. Maine Governor Paul LePage has steadfastly opposed Medicaid expansion and has vetoed several bills passed by the legislature calling for expansion. Collins says her goal is for more people to become insured, not fewer, and that's one of the major reasons why she is against the American Health Care Act, a bill to replace the Affordable Care Act that was approved by the Republican-controlled House. Collins says she also objects to how the American Health Care Act would be much more expensive for older, rural people in the 50 to 64 age group, with premiums expected to rise by as much as 800%, according to the Congressional Budget Office analysis of the bill. Indiana, with a Republican House, Senate, and governor, has emerged as the model of success for Obamacare Medicaid expansion. How odd! Forbes. The Nintendo Switch Online app is as terrible in practice as it was in theory. With the launch of Splatoon 2 comes the release of Nintendo's long-awaited online service app, which uses your phone to set up voice chat and party play for Nintendo's online offerings. The initial reaction when Nintendo announced that their online service would be run through a phone app was confusion, and it turns out that what seemed like a bad idea is actually a pretty bad idea, at least with how the app currently functions. Someday in the future, people will slowly begin to understand Nintendo hates online gaming. They can't stand that stuff. Nintendo wants people to play games together, locally, in pairs, and in groups. It will be a glorious day.